Hey everyone, Andrew here, and it's time for another What the Heck Was That? The series where I look at films and movies and stories that just leave you scratching your head and going, what did I just watch? And why was that a thing? Today we will be looking into a film that I saw as a child that I remembered, and I kept telling people about and trying to find it, and everyone told me that that doesn't exist, that that's not a thing. To the point that I started to think I was made it up and I was insane. But eventually I did find it, which is good for me, because it's like, I've had that with a couple things, and all of them I've managed to find in one way or the other. And I get why I had a hard time finding this one, because I kept thinking it was like some really obscure live-action Disney film that they were trying to hide. You know, like Something Wicked This Way Comes, and Parent Trap 3 and 4. And, you know, Beyond Witch Mountain. You know, the ones that they don't like to talk about. Nope, this was a Canadian film. And it's a very odd, little, insane film that I remembered very little of. And the stuff that I remembered of it was odd, but nowhere near as odd as the entire film turned out to be. So today we'll be looking at a little film called The Peanut Butter Solution. This is, like I said, this was a Canadian film made in 1985. It was made by the Les Productions Lafette and is actually part of a series, which is very weird, but they're not really connected. They're just odd little children's stories. So, the story of The Peanut Butter Solution follows a young kid named Michael Baskin, who's around 11 years old. He is living in a house with his father, who is a struggling artist, and his sister, who is basically taking over being head of the house and making food and keeping everyone on track and in line, because their mother is off in Australia dealing with the estate of the dead grandfather. And so she won't show up until the dead end of the film. So it's just these three in the house primarily. Yeah, the dad is a struggling artist who makes paintings of birds for some reason. I'm shocked that he sells anything, given how iffy the art of the stuff was. But okay, yeah, sure. And the sister is basically become sole caretaker and is taking care of everybody. And she'll basically get up in the morning, put on their mom's robe, and make breakfast, which Michael does not like, because, you know, you're trying to take mom's place, and that robe doesn't fit you, and this, that, and the other. But the sister basically ignores him for the most part. Michael's friend Connie shows up, and Connie's this little Asian boy that is like very talkative and very energetic, and he's like, oh yeah, I gotta tell you, there was a fire last night at the big mansion down the street. It was like really huge, and all these fire trucks showed up, and people died, and all this stuff. And Michael becomes obsessed with the house at this point. He's like, oh, we gotta go check that out. And it's like, nope, you go to school. So Michael and Connie go to school. They end up going into their art class, which is being taught by a person that is referred to as the Senor. And he is very strict, very authoritative, and he wants the children to do realistic paintings, to do still lives, to not be imaginative, to not create. So he has them drawing a still life of his dog. Michael ignores this and paints the burning house, and this enrages the Senor, who rips the painting in half and yells at the kid and kicks him out of the class. Michael and Connie go off to the remains of the house, and it's still somewhat there. Parts of it have collapsed, but for the most part the building itself is mostly intact, just burnt through. There's this big giant ramp that they were using to like toss out debris as they were clearing it out, and Michael gets the idea to climb up this ramp and go into the house. Connie tries to convince him not to do that, but it doesn't work, and we just see Michael go inside. He starts screaming, and then he comes sliding out of the house unconscious. Connie manages to get Michael home. They get him into bed, and they explain what happened, and the dad's like, okay, well, that's weird, but he should be fine. He doesn't seem to have a fever or anything, so we'll just let him sleep it off and see what happens. And the next morning, Michael wakes up, goes out into the breakfast office, and they all go and freak out because Michael has lost all of his hair. He is as balder than a brand new baby, just completely smooth. They take him to a doctor who explains to him that he has been affected by something known as the fright. That he saw something so scary and so intense that it caused this illness to hit him, and that is what resulted in his hair loss. And that it should grow back on its own eventually, but they are not sure if and when. Michael starts to feel like a freak, starts to dislike it, get mad at life and everything for losing the hair. He doesn't want to go to school, but his dad keeps trying to convince him to do so. They manage to put a wig on him and get him to go to school and use a tar to help hold it down. But during a soccer game, one of the boys grabs him by the hair and it pulls it off. And, everyone starts making fun of him, and so Michael runs home embarrassed. And Michael just starts hanging out in the basement playing his drums and being like, I hate everyone! I'm never going outside again! Type of thing. During the night, Michael goes down to the kitchen and he ends up running into these two ghosts. And it turns out that one of the ghosts is this homeless man that he'd given money to. And it's like, the homeless guy's like, you were one of the only people that was nice to me while I was alive. It's a shame I died in that fire, but you helped me out. So my friend Mary here, who is the other ghost, has this thing that should help you get your hair back. And she pulls out this old piece of paper, and she's like, alright, so here is the things that you need to get. It's like, you need to get 3 flies, put them on your head. And Michael's like, okay, and he goes to reach for the paper. She's like, nope, this is mine. You repeat, and you say what I say. Okay? Okay. So he gets this entire recipe that's basically like feathers and tar and all these odd things to put into the solution, and the final thing to put in there is a little bit of peanut butter. You got to be careful because the more peanut butter you use, the more consequences there are. But you just need to put a little bit in and put it on your head, leave it there for a minute or two, and then wash it off. Michael gets all the ingredients, starts trying to put it together, uses the blender to try to make it. His dad and his sister see what he's doing. They think he's going to drink it, so they basically tackle him and flush the solution down the toilet. Michael gets enraged at them and goes back to his room. A little bit later, he is visited by the ghosts again, and Mary is like, you don't remember the recipe, do you? Well, nobody gave me a second chance, so you're not going to get one. And the homeless guy is like, Mary, people gave you lots of second chances. Don't give me this. In fact, I'm taking the paper. Michael, here you go. And gives Michael the paper. The next day, Michael makes the solution, this time more in private, makes it all up in the bathroom and starts to try to put it on his head. And he has to be very careful because if any part of the body that it's on and on for any kind of period, it will cause hair to grow there as well. So he's got to be careful to not get it on his, his hands, his eyes, anything else. And he starts trying to put it on, but it's too runny. It is not holding up at all. So he knows that he has to put more peanut butter into it. So he puts more peanut butter into it, plies it, waits, washes it off, looks in the mirror. He looks the same. He's like, oh, that didn't work. Okay. And he turns and starts heading downstairs, and his family just starts reacting positively because the hair is growing. In fact, the hair is already starting to grow very quickly because he goes from just having a slight buzz cut to a full head of hair within like a minute. Like, it is ridiculously fast. Connie drags Michael aside, and he's like, okay, what did you do? You have to tell me, we don't keep secrets from each other. How did you fix this? And Michael presents the solution, and Connie's like, oh, can I try it? And Michael's like, you have a full head of hair. Why would you want to try it? And Connie's like, no, for down there. It's like, fine, and lets Connie do that. Michael starts going back to school, but the hair is already starting to become a problem. It just keeps getting longer and longer and longer, and starts getting very much in the way. And his sister and his dad are like, well, his sister's jealous because she's like, I wish my hair could be that voluptuous and that grow that fast. But Michael's getting annoyed with it. He has Connie cutting his hair in class to keep, under control. But this gets them in trouble, and Michael gets basically suspended from school and told not to come back. Connie is also having trouble with it because the hair is now on him is now going down past his ankles. Connie gets up in the middle of one of the nights because his legs are burning hot from all the hair down there, and he just starts yelling at the hair and being very mean to it, and for whatever reason it just decides to stop growing. The next day, Michael gets angry at the hair and what's going on, and he decides that he's just going to go to school. And his dad's telling him, like, you're just gonna get sent back. They don't want you there. But he continues on before Connie's able to get to the house and tell him the solution. During all this, the Senor has gotten in trouble for the way he's been talking to the children and being mean to them and yelling at them. So he has been fired from his job. He's driving around in his van and he sees Michael with this thick head of hair that's still growing. And he decides to kidnap Michael, as well as a bunch of other children from the neighborhood. Michael's dad and sister start to go, desperate, trying to find Michael. They've seen no signs of him. They have no idea what has happened to him, to the point that his dad has been breaking his paintbrushes in frustration. Connie and Susie decide that they're going to get her dad new paintbrushes, and hopefully that would help with his mood a little bit. And as they're at the supply store, the owner's like, oh, hey, we got this new specialty brush, and it runs for like $20, but it's very, very fine hair on it. And Susie grabs it and is like, I know this hair. I've cut this hair. I've brushed this hair. This is Michael's hair. Where did you get this brush? And the shop owner's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it reveals that there's this guy that just comes by with this weird fancy brushes and sells them to him, and he sells them off. So they decide they're going to wait and figure out who it is, and they see him and they realize that it is the Senor. So they're like, okay, well, he's in a van, we're on bikes, we can't really follow him. So they decide that they will come up with this elaborate plan to track him. So Connie climbs into the back of the van with a pipe and a big bag of sugar, and basically has the pipe sticking out the back end of the door and is using the sugar to leave a trail for Susie to follow. Susie manages to follow it to a certain distance, but then a street sweeper comes through and washes all the sugar away, and she loses the trail. Connie gets found out, gets thrown into this big warehouse where the Senor has kidnapped dozens of children and is using them to make these big paintbrushes using Michael's hair. And basically Michael is strapped down, and a machine is feeding his hair down to all these kids, and they are making all of these brushes. Basically the kids have to make 500 brushes a day or they don't get to eat. Revealed to Connie that these brushes are not just normal brushes, these are magic brushes that the Senor can paint pictures that you can literally walk into. But because he only paints imaginary things, he doesn't paint a real place, none of them have been able to use that to escape. Connie's like, okay, no, I'm gonna get Michael and we're gonna break out of here. So he just decides that they're going to sneak to it during the night. But the Senor has this big elaborate trap using all of the hairs as tripwires to keep him aware of what the kids are doing. Connie comes up with a solution of using a little tape thing to let him know where the hairs are, gets to Michael, starts to try to get him out, but the Senor catches him, traps him in a cage, and leaves him suspended above all the other ones for a couple hours, to the point where Connie convinces the Senor, like, I'll do whatever you want, I'll be your son, whatever, just let me out. And basically acts like he is the best friends with the Senor and that he's going to be the Senor's son. And he's like, Papa, can you paint me a picture? Connie convinces the Senor to paint the burnt down mansion, and the Senor paints it using this elaborate LCD screen thing. Like, it looks very fake now, but in '85 that was super impressive. Like, that looks pretty decent, even though I 100% know what's going on and how they did it. But then they convince the Senor that he has to climb into the house. He climbs in, and then we hear the scream, and he comes sliding out. The kids take him and throw him into another room, and they start cutting Michael's hair and getting him out. And Connie reveals to Michael, oh yeah, the fright has been passed on to someone else. so your hair is no longer going to grow, so it's just going to be the length that it is right now. Michael gets the idea that I need to crawl into the painting to figure out what was inside the mansion that gave me the fright. Michael does so, gets inside, and finds out that he was scared by the ghosts. That Mary specifically had given him the fright, and that they had felt bad about it, which is why the other ghost had given him the solution of how to fix the problem. Michael realizes this, comes back outside. Meanwhile, the Senor has now gained consciousness and is trying to keep them all captured, and he has gone completely bald from the fright. Susie, thankfully, managed to find the last bit of the sugar trail that right before it goes into the base that they are at, and gets the police and their dad, and they show up and they arrest the Senor, and everyone gets to go home, and Michael and his family are reunited as the mom arrives in taxicab, and the whole family is back together. End of film. So this is such an odd film in so many regards. What I remembered from this as a kid is I literally remembered him having no hair, putting something in his scalp, and then his hair growing nonstop. And it really sounded and felt like a really old Disney film. It reminded me of stuff like the computer that wore tennis shoes and things like that. This feels like a live-action, modern-day fairy tale kind of story, because it is just so out there and so weird and so insane that you could only describe this as a fairy tale-like story. You have a doctor literally telling someone, "Oh, you lost all of your hair because you got the fright." You are a medical professional, and this is your assessment of how this kid lost all of his hair. Okay. Then you just have the ghosts showing up almost out of nowhere. They just appear, and then you have to have this explanation of like, oh, if ghosts are wandering around all the time, going into people's houses, messing with things, why don't people know about it? And it's like, the explanation is, well, it's like you only know about a ghost if you see them. So if you see me do something, you can hear it, but if you don't see me, you can't hear it. And they go about showing that off.
Shut your eyes a second.
It's weird. It's just such a weird element to throw into the film. This homeless guy that you met and were nice to once died horribly in this fire. And it's like, oh yeah, we randomly have this solution to fix it for some reason. Most likely because Mary was going around scaring people and needed a cure for it. Like, the fact that that's what it turned out to be is also, like, insane. You were expecting this, like, big, elaborate, scary thing, and it's just like, it's whatever the ghost happened to be doing at the time that freaked him out. Like, okay. And I guess that's supposed to show that he's grown, that now seeing them in there doesn't scare him anymore. And then you have the hair itself, which is such a cool effect and really cool idea. And I love the way it's done. I've never seen it really done like this or done better. And the hair just seems to grow on its own and have its own life to it. Just works so well. They do a good job of explaining at least why the hair thing keeps growing and growing and growing. It's because he used too much peanut butter, and this is the consequence. Because he overdid it. And it's a good thing he didn't get any on his hands or anywhere else. The fact that Connie just yells at his hair and that made it stop is so weird. And the fact that they didn't get to their friend fast enough to keep them from getting kidnapped to tell them that is also so weird. And then you have the Senor and his entire plan of kidnapping these children to make paintbrushes when he had no reason to think that this kid's hair would be good for paintbrushes. Like, I understand that we do use horsehair and stuff for paintbrushes. I don't think human hair works really well for paintbrushes. I mean, it might, but I have a hard time believing it. And then the fact that some reason the hair is magic enough to make the paintbrushes magical, so they paint photorealistic settings and do so without him having to dip into any other color or anything. And then you can just step into the paintings and go places. Also, like, if that's the case and it takes you to the actual physical place, why didn't all of the kids just escape through that house and just go off the sides and go to their homes? Like, or is it this weird sub-dimension where only the house exists and you can't leave to go to other things? But if that's the case, then why were you making all of the paintings non-realistic places? It's also really funny and interesting that the teacher who was in trouble for, constantly telling kids not to use their imagination was using the paintbrushes to only make imaginary places. From one hand, it's like with the Senor, it's like, I get what he was doing in the school because they were supposed to be painting still lifes. That is the practice of painting something as accurately as you can when you're looking at a solitary object. So don't use your imagination, don't go crazy and all that. That is not a horrible thing to teach as an art thing. This might have been a group that was a little too young, but I mean, they're like 11 years old. They should have at least a little bit of control to not go crazy. Granted, yelling and screaming at a kid because they didn't follow those rules is another thing entirely. And given the fact that he was so willing to kidnap dozens of children and hold them all ransom, the fact that the kids didn't just pile up and overpower this one old man and his dog seems so weird, because it's like, there was a good 20, 30 kids there. Like, if they all teamed up together, they could have overpowered both of them. But it is just such an odd little duck that just... This is one of those ones where it's like, the fact that it's so weird is good, because that's the only way this would stick in your brain. Because the setting is kind of boring, the performances are fairly boring, although the kid actors are pretty good. The young kid that plays Michael is named Matthew McKay, and he really emotes in this. He really does give it some heart and some stuff. And it's funny because you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, this feels very Canadian. Like, I didn't feel that like when I saw it as a kid, because I didn't know better, but as an adult you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, especially when you get to the news articles and half of them are in full French. You're like, ah, okay, that makes sense. But it's just such a weird thing. And also weird that this is like part of a set. I didn't realize this till I looked into it a little bit, but this is part of a series called The Tales for All. 12 or 13 films in this. And I didn't go through plots of all of them, but the few that I looked at looked way more sane and normal than this one does. This looks like the odd duck in this thing. But it also has, again, this air of darkness and seediness to it. Like, this is not a light-hearted fairy tale. This is a, the big bad wolf eats everyone and they all die kind of fairy tale. You go and see something that terrifies you, and that terror is big enough to make, change you in a cellular level to cause you to lose hair. And then the solution is given to you by a bunch of ghosts, but you have to follow the orders or things go horribly wrong. And then he does it, and it manages to keep his hair growing and growing, so he basically becomes Rapunzel. Very fairy tale elements to it, which is part of why it sticks in your brain as this weird, odd little thing. It does have some Disney qualities to it. It does have some oddness to it. It is not a film that I particularly loved, but it is a film that I respect and found intriguing and fascinating. And it's just such odd, characters in general. Like, even not counting the actual magic and weird stuff of that one, just the characters themselves are odd. Like the dad who's up there painting these elaborate watercolors of birds, and that is his art style. Such an odd film in every regard, but it's really interesting and entertaining. Yeah, that's my thoughts on The Peanut Butter Solution. It's not a film that I necessarily love, it's not one I would necessarily recommend, but it is on YouTube. It is interesting enough, it's worth your time. If for nothing else, then it is a fun, insane little journey. But that is just my thoughts. What do you think? Have you heard of this film before? Have you seen it before? Did you see this as a kid like I did, and you just have it as like a weird fever dream that you're like, I know I saw this. I know this exists. Or do you love this film and have seen this series? And is any of these films in this series worth checking out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Happy watching, happy reading. I will see you all next time. Bye.